The hunt led him away from civilization, deep into the snow-covered valley. Stopping smoothly, he knelt down to check his back trail. His eyes drifted, tracking the moon through the thin veil of clouds. It would be dawn soon, and he was far from home. There were too many of them, and he did not know what he would do if he found them. He searched the thick foliage and tall trees, zigzagging the terrain while looking for any sign of a trail. His chest ached, and his body was cold. With no time to grab a jacket, he'd been forced to move unprepared in pursuit of the camp's attackers. He stepped ahead and saw a human track, this one fresh, a heel print in the moist clay of the forest floor. Just ahead was a crumbling of rotted stump where a big boot kicked it, then ground it down while the wearer stopped to look around. The young soldier studied the terrain. He knelt down and allowed his eyes to search, starting far out, then slowly sweeping to objects within his reach. Grabbing a glove full of the crumbling tree stump, he squeezed it, allowing the damp pieces to fall between his fingers. He reached out and cut a triangle into a nearby tree to mark his path. The ground flowed up and away from him, the trail following the natural contours of the ground. Most game trails moved that way. Wild animals traveled along the paths of least resistance, and after generations of migration, they broke the earth, shaping the routes that he now followed. Recreational hikers probably once used this same path, compacting the clay and smoothing the surface. He suspected the raiders would follow the same route. He rose back to his feet and felt the stiff muscles of his broad shoulders. He shrugged, flexing his back, and moved on. Dressed in tanned hides, he had left his worn and faded military clothing in a box months ago. His shirt was thick and well sewn. His canvas pants soaked in wax and animal fat to make them waterproof. He abandoned most of the things of his past. All that remained were his weapons. He carried an M9 pistol in a belt and an M4 he had recovered from a dead man. Why did they come here? What reason would the raiders have to attack the camp? The people of Camp Cloud always kept to themselves. Nearly a year had passed since the Primal Holocaust. The beasts had moved to the background of their concerns. Hunger drove the Primals, and their behavior was predictable. The living were what really scared the survivors, those who wanted what everyone else had. Dan Cloud, who had led the group, managed to keep peace with other bands of survivors, trading when they could, but mostly staying out of the way and hidden in their own remote mountain valley. Shane stopped near a downed oak and leaned back, letting his weight rest on his heels. He looked again at the tough terrain. "I should stop now and dig in," he whispered. "Wait for help to catch up." They would for sure send a rescue party. He shook his head in frustration. What if they were all dead? What if there was no one coming? Impossible. They couldn't take them all. His people would come for them. They always came. Shane knelt again and let his fingers touch the edges of a deep hoof print, squeezing bits of the damp soil in his hand. His stomach growled as he recognized the print. A big buck. He would make a fine meal for his fire. He looked up at the sky and saw the rising sun. He had been on the trail too long. He was burning out and losing his edge. He would give it another hour and then secure shelter. Crushed and bent vegetation off the trail reflected the light and caught his eye. Searching the battered weeds, he spotted a strange batch of tracks cutting the raiders' trail. He knew what they were, and it worried him more than his exhaustion. It was unusual to see primals this far up the mountain, away from the easy traveling outside the valley. The infected monsters stayed away from the highlands unless they were hunting prey. Something either pushed them or drew them there, most likely the gunfire from the attack. Looking at the tracks, he could see there were at least 5 of them, and one was a big son of a bitch by the way the worn boot tread pushed deep into the soil with every step. Shane stayed near the ground, listening for any sign they were close. He held his breath, exhaled slowly, and then took it in again, trying to taste the musty air.